I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
The United States turns the page as Joe Biden becomes the country's 46th president. Hello, I'm Arnold Knight, and this is The Heat. There was some of the usual pomp and ceremony, but there was something different about Joe Biden's inauguration. Gone were the crowds, a casualty of both the pandemic and mob violence that took place at the U.S. Capitol 2 weeks ago. There was the resulting massive security presence that shut down the nation's capital and an outgoing president who refused to attend. But when it was all over, there was a new man in charge with a decidedly different vision for the country than the one before. For more, we turn now to CGTN's Sean Caleb's. Sean, take us through today's ceremony and what we heard from the new president, Joe Biden.
Well, in many ways, it would be difficult to imagine the inauguration going off any more smoothly than it did today. But if you look at the outside circumstances, certainly this was a swearing in unlike any other the United States has seen. The backdrop, 25,000 National Guard troops have been deployed into this area, a number of police as well. The National Mall was virtually empty. We're used to seeing people packed in shoulder to shoulder to watch the new president and vice president take the oath of office. We didn't see it today at all. But one thing that Joe Biden did talk about in a very powerful 21-minute speech, he talked about unity, unity, unity. It was a theme that he kept going back to. He also talked about the events in many ways that have unfolded since the general election in early November. First, Donald Trump's, without using Trump's name, what Donald Trump kept saying time and time again, that there was an effort to steal the election. Well, it simply didn't happen. And then, of course, the insurrection that unfolded here, shocking many people across the United States as the Trump loyal supporters just poured into the Capitol. And we heard Biden talk about how fragile democracy is. But he also reached out, especially to the 75 million people who did not vote for him, and said now is the time for this country to pull together to move forward.
History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos.
Indeed, a state of chaos. And also Biden is getting high marks from many Republicans tonight as darkness settles over the nation's capital for reaching across the aisle, for pledging to work with Republicans as well for this unity pledge. But in a nation that is this divided, other U.S. leaders have heard it before, have tried it before, but they know that it's so polarized. Promising and delivering can be entirely different. One final note, he also promised to once again engage with the world. And that's significant because 4 years ago, Trump walked up here and delivered a speech that really shocked a lot of people, saying that the American carnage is over. It's going to be America first. And that's really what we saw for 4 years. Not just America first, but first, second, third, fourth, fifth on. It was just about America, isolationism.
So, Sean, what can we expect over the next few days from the new administration?
It has started already. Joe Biden is already taking steps. He's enacting some 17 measures, everything from getting the United States back into the, what many people, all-important Paris Climate Accord, getting the United States back involved with the World Health Organization. He is going to stop the ban on chiefly from Muslim nations, people coming here. He's also signed an order, or he will be signing an order that will stop construction of the wall between Mexico and the United States. And that was really one of the cornerstones of Trump's administration. There are so many measures. It's difficult to go through all 17, But we also know he's not going to do it alone. It's going to be a heavy load that he's going to have to carry, especially with the coronavirus, trying to get the vaccine program back on track and breathe life into the economy. Find a way so people aren't kicked out of their homes, aren't tossed out, lose their mortgages, things of that nature. He's going to have what many predict is going to be a very active vice president, Kamala Harris. She's someone who's been very effective over the years that she has been in the U.S. Senate. And she's also talked openly about what it means to graduate from a historically black college and university, Howard, here, and going to school and having black professors and really coming out and having a sense of identity. So she's going to call on all that, summon all that experience, as well as she tries and works with Biden to try to bridge all these racial divides, which have really plagued almost every nook and cranny of the United States the past 4 years. It is a full plate. They have a lot to do. It has got off to a good start. Tomorrow, Biden's going to focus solely on coronavirus. Then on Friday, economic measures. A lot going on.
Thanks, Sean. That's CGTN Sean Caleb's reporting. Well, there is much to talk about. Let's get to our panel. Brian O'Donovan is the Washington correspondent for the Irish broadcaster RTE News. Award-winning journalist Deborah Douglas is a distinguished professor at Chicago's DePauw University and the author of the new book, U.S. Civil Rights Trail, a traveler's guide to the people, places, and events that made the movement. Jadan Horyn is a writer and conservative commentator, and Joel Rubin served in the Obama administration as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. He's currently the Executive Director of the American Jewish Congress. Welcome to all of you. And Joel Rubin, let me start with you. You know, the New York Times had a headline today which said that the inauguration of Biden kicks off a new era in Washington, and it would seem that the entire country needs a new era, because we look at one NBC poll that says 73% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. So the new president, Joe Biden, has his work cut out for him, but he does face considerable challenges, of course, the pandemic being the main one in the immediate future. He's also talked about a very ambitious vaccination program. 30 million Americans are either not working right now or are underemployed. There's also the issues of immigration, racial injustice, police brutality, and mass incarceration, issues that we've talked about over the last 4 years. Now, you are a Democrat. What does today mean for you, and what can we expect? How different will this new presidency be?
Well, Anand, thank you for having me. And really, you laid out a significant amount of challenges that are before us. And as a Democrat, I'm proud. As an American, I'm proud to see that we have someone now going in the White House that really wants to take on these challenges head on and is developing plans to do that. And we need to remember that the hand that Joe Biden has been dealt is probably the most difficult hand ever handed off to an incoming president that we've had since 1933 at the height of the Great Depression. So Joe Biden's going to roll up his sleeves. He now has a Democratic Congress, Senate, and House on his side, and that's going to make things a little bit easier for him, certainly at the vote count. But we're going to also have to look at the politics, and I think that was where he spoke to today as well, which is to try to get some support, chip away at some of the opposition to him, and get some support to help ensure that his programs do go forward. So he's ready. He's already signed executive orders. He's got a significant amount of his team in place at the White House, and he has a lot of work, as we all do, on our hands.
Right. Deborah Douglas, the one big first we saw today, Wednesday morning, the first woman of color, and the first woman, in fact, is Vice President Kamala Harris. Her father was Jamaican. Her mother is Indian. What does that tell us?
It tells us that America actually works. I think today we breathe a collective sigh of relief that we have credible leaders full of integrity, ready to take the reins.
I can't hear anyone.
And Kamala started work already today. You know, they both got sworn in and they turned right around and they got to work. It's a great day for all women, especially Black women. And I know that my South Asian friends are really proud of this moment too. There's so much to be excited about in terms of how we walk and hold ourselves in this world as women. And we know that she has the ability to do the job. the intellect to do the job, the integrity to do the job, and we're looking at a role model for a woman who could be one day the next president of the United States.
Right, and Deborah, you know, after Barack Obama was elected the first African-American president, we heard talk about post-racial America. And of course, then we had 4 years of Trump, and that wasn't so much post-racial America. Now we have Kamala Harris. Do you think we've reached another turning point?
Well, I never believed in post-racial America. I always called it most racial America, because you have to look at the structure of society,
right,
especially the economic structure of society. And so this is why I'm excited about the executive order to halt the evictions and the moratorium on foreclosures. And I'm really excited to see what direction this administration goes on into delving deeply into the structural issues, you know, issues such as the need to pay a living wage, something that we've been acutely aware of in this past year as we've watched essential workers save us all as we've moved through this pandemic.
Right. Brian O'Donovan, Donald Trump, talking about foreign policy, Donald Trump was an isolationist president. As our reporter told us at the beginning of the show, he was a man who talked about America first, second, third, and fourth. And we look at recent polls, we can see what the result of that has been. Recent polls show us that 1 in 3 Europeans say the US can't be trusted anymore. That includes 53% in Germany. Biden now promises to reach out to allies and repair the relationships with United States allies. This is what he had to say. Let's listen.
Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges.
So, Brian, no doubt the leaders in European capitals were listening and watching that inauguration address today. How will they see this promise? How will they hear the promise made by Joe Biden? What will it take to restore relations?
Well, there was certainly broad welcomes from all of the European leaders as he was inaugurated and made his address today. Some interesting lines and comments. Boris Johnson said it was a big step forward and that America had been through a bumpy time. That was interesting language coming from the British Prime Minister because, of course, he was a friend of Donald Trump's and a supporter of Donald Trump's. But here he was very much welcoming Joe Biden's time in office. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, also said that after 4 years, Europe and America are friends again. And I thought that was very strong language to use. But remember, Donald Trump had described the European Union as a foe and an enemy when it came to trade. He was a president who wanted to be isolationist, who wanted to put America first. Joe Biden would have said that was a case of putting America alone. So we did see the European leaders coming out thick and fast. Angela Merkel as well welcoming this, saying it would be a new chapter in relations between Europe and the US. The Taoiseach, or Prime Minister of Ireland, Micheál Martin, he was also quick to come out, congratulate Joe Biden on his inauguration and very much highlighted Joe Biden's Irish roots. Remember, Joe Biden is very proud Irish American, likes to speak about his Irish heritage, likes to quote Irish poets and Irish authors when he makes his speeches. So certainly he's being embraced by Europe. I think expectations need to be tempered. We have to remember he is the president of the United States. He is not the president of the world. He is not the president of Europe. He's not the president of Ireland or Germany. He will, in his own way, have to put America first because that is the people that he serves. But certainly when it comes to reaching out, Joe Biden very much in his inauguration speech today saying that he would reform those alliances that have been damaged over the last 4 years.
Right, and very quickly, Brian, he will reinforce the relationship in terms of security with Europe, especially the NATO alliance?
Yes, and I mean, and that is where many of the countries like Germany would point to saying that we need this, we need to reform this again. Remember Joe Biden's, or rather Donald Trump's attitude to NATO was very much they're not paying enough, giving out about member countries, not giving their own contributions, a very fractious relationship there, a distancing from the old allies, a cozying up and a warming up to the old enemies. Everybody's hoping there's going to be this reset now under Joe Biden and it will go back to the norms that we saw pre-Trump.
Right, let's bring Jadan Horyn into the conversation. Jadan, Biden talked about unity in his address today. We also heard that at the beginning of the show. Our reporter talked about it. He also called for more civility in politics. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured.
So, Jadan, how will this appeal for civility and especially for unity be heard by Republicans, especially those 75 million Republicans or people who voted for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I couldn't help but wonder.
Sorry, Jadan. Deborah, I'll get to you. Jadan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, when we listen to Biden, and I think Republicans are hoping that the words are backed up with actions. But unfortunately, we know that congressional Democrats have already passed one of the most restrictive rules packages in the House that will severely infringe on the rights of the political minority, in this case the Republicans, to really add to legislation. And so, Republicans are sitting there, especially those in the Capitol, and saying, look, we absolutely need and want this. America needs and wants this. But it cannot just be words. It needs to be strong actions. It needs to be reaching across the aisle. It needs to be lowering the temperature of the partisan rhetoric. It needs to be bringing Republicans into the fold. And unfortunately, we're not going to see that in the House. And that it tends to be where the tempers of democracy exist. And hopefully the Senate, under Schumer and with some kind of power sharing agreement and structure with, former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, that is where that unity will take place, because there's no way that they will be able to bring into the fold, the Trump supporters that fully believe that Democrats want to end their existence, whether it's complicit through big tech or the silencing of dissenting voices. So I personally am hopeful. I listened to Biden's speech and I thought it struck the exact tone it needed to do. But again, the president sets the tone, but he needs to get his party in line, and especially his congressional allies.
Okay, Deborah, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
Sorry for that interruption.
No, you're fine.
I just got so excited because when I heard the unity talk, I was a little bit concerned about it, because soft, soothing words don't really address what's happened in this country over the past 4 years, but definitely over the past couple of weeks. But the words did strike like a good note, a positive note. But I can tell you that a lot of people in marginalized communities don't believe that the rancor is over. And so we don't want to over expect positivity or over expect, a sense of faux unity where it does not exist.
Okay, Joel, as Jadan says, words are great. They do set the tone, but, actions are needed as well. What kind of actions can Joe Biden take right now to show the other side, people sitting on the other side of the aisle, that he's serious about compromise, that he's serious about having a bipartisan agenda?
Well, first and foremost, I agree with Jadan that the speech really did strike the right tone. It was the kind of speech that Americans yearn for. It's the kind of speech that enabled Joe Biden to win a convincing victory in November. And I think that might be where we need to go next, which is that we still have Republicans, the majority in the House of the Republicans serving there, rejecting the actual results of this election. And there needs to be a little bit of internal soul searching at this point amongst Republicans, rather than on day one complaining that Democrats aren't reaching out to them when they didn't vote to certify the election. So hopefully that will take place. I think in the Senate, we're going to see a little more of that, because clearly 50-50, the numbers require it. But Joe Biden, he has an opportunity to stay above the fray and reach out to the American people who support Republicans, rather than necessarily going to the elected members who are very much in a position where they have to be called to account for their behavior over the last couple of weeks.
Jadan, doesn't Joel have a point there? There's got to be some give and take. There's got to be a bit of reaching out from the Republican side as well.
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately in politics, turnabout is fair play. And I really hope that, congressional Republicans do not do what congressional Democrats did after the 2016 election and insist that President Biden is not their president and, peddling conspiracy theories and attack the president out the gate. In order for this to work, congressional Republicans need to sit down and they have to be honest arbiters about what is negotiable and what is not, and what they want to achieve together and what they don't. Some of those items might be infrastructure. Some of those items, might be looking at reform for tech companies and, in general, antitrust. But, when we talk about economics or if we talk about social policy, obviously the parties are very far apart, whether it's a Trump Republican Party or a traditional Republican Party, from the Democrats and from congressional Democrats in general. So I think, that is part and parcel. If congressional Republicans do not sit down, there really will be only talk of compromise and bipartisanship, and there will be no action.
Brian, Joe Biden, the new president, he signed orders, about 17 orders this afternoon, straight after the ceremony. One of them was for the United States to stop the withdrawal of from the World Health Organization. He has also expressed a wish to rejoin the Iran nuclear agreement. And he said during the campaign, actually, that he wants the United States to get back into these international organizations, to be back at the head of the table, as he put it. What will this mean for the whole idea of international governance with someone like Biden reaching out now?
I think Joe Biden put it best when he speaks about America being back at the head of the table, and that is where they used to be, and everybody appreciated that and saw that as that's where they were. They were the superpower that were in charge of so many of these international arrangements, and over the last 4 years we had this unprecedented upending of that norm. Now we are returning to that. Again, I say what I said earlier, I think the world needs to temper expectations as well. There's huge pressure on Joe Biden, and of course in Europe, we are all very focused on his international relations, but he has such big domestic issues to deal with as well. And listening to all the other speakers there, you're struck by the challenges that are out there, the divisions within his own party, within the Republican Party. I myself was down in the National Mall for the day today, and you're struck by what a bizarre world we're living in right now. This empty, huge space that would normally be filled with hundreds of thousands of people on Inauguration Day, and instead we had 200,000 flags planted in the ground, representing the people who should have been there under normal circumstances, but things are anything but normal. A security lockdown, a president who millions of people claim stole the election, and a raging pandemic. There's lots on Joe Biden's plate right now.
Deborah Douglas, I'm going to talk about that race issue again. Biden did say in his address today that there is now a cry for racial justice. Let's watch.
The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat.
So, Deborah, what do you expect from the new president in terms of addressing the gross racial injustices that we see in the United States? Issues like police brutality, mass incarceration. Let's not forget that he was the politician, the senator, who told us at one time that he was very proud of the crime bill that he signed in 1994, which gave us mass incarceration today.
Yes, I know he takes a lot of hits about that, and I think that he's a victim of something that I call time-traveling wokeness. At the time that that crime bill was passed, there were a lot of people who supported that crime bill because of the situation on the ground at the time. But we know better, and because we know better, we can do better. And I believe that the president can do better this time around, given our experience and all of the data and intelligence that we have around the issue of mass incarceration. In terms of what can be done immediately, there are just some no-brainer things that can be done. And we know that because he signed several executive orders today. But, a couple of things that can be reinstituted right now is the passage of a renewed Voting Rights Act, right, that will expand across all 50 states instead of the southern states that were included the last time around in the 65 Act. We also have the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act that did not get approval because of Rand Paul.
Let me ask you this. I mean, do you have real faith in this? Because Joe Biden has been in public office for something like 50 years. Why didn't he do this before?
Because, you know, like I said, he didn't know better. And now we have told him that he has to do better. Now we have started actually listening to Black women, which is the reason why he's in office in the first place. So I'm not saying that he did the right thing the last time, but I don't see any point in going back into the future saying you made a really bad decision last time. I think that we need to expect the best from him and apply the pressure, put the foot on his neck to do what's right this time.
Right. Okay, Joel, I want to get back to one of the immediate problems that Joe Biden faces, and that, of course, is the coronavirus pandemic. He's promised 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days of his administration. He's issued a mask challenge. But as you are aware, COVID has become very politicized. Yeah. Vast numbers of people say they will not wear the mask on political grounds. Vast numbers of people in the country say they will not take the vaccination because they don't trust government. How does he overcome these challenges?
Well, I have to say that those positions are selfish and they harm other Americans. And we need to have an attitudinal shift here in this country. And I think that Joe Biden, first and foremost, is going to be a stark difference from Donald Trump when it comes to talking about the coronavirus and talking about the importance of taking preventive measures to not get it. And the other thing that strikes me, it's so it's remarkable in its simplicity, and I can't believe it wasn't done before, which is that Joe Biden is going to mobilize FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's going to utilize the Defense Production Act to produce more vaccines and use FEMA to distribute it. He actually has a plan where the United States federal government is going to engage and help make sure Americans get vaccinated. That did not happen under Donald Trump. So the combination of moral leadership and practical action, that's significant, that's different. And the third thing I should also say, he's going to have to get it funded. And that's why we have a $1.9 trillion bill coming through Congress. And that freight train is very powerful. And we need more money to go into ending the coronavirus and keeping people economically alive and sustained. And that's going to be a big argument for him as well.
Jadan, I have less than a minute. I want to talk about one of the last things that President Trump did, and that was he signed those orders granting clemency to more than 140 people, including his very controversial former advisor, Steve Bannon. But there were no pardons for Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, the whistleblowers. Edward Snowden, of course, is in Russia. Julian Assange is in prison in Britain. What did you make of that last act by the president?
I think a lot of conservatives are a little alarmed at the fact that Assange and Snowden did not receive commutations or pardons for what they did. I understand the argument.
But the word was that he came. The word, Jadan, was that he came under pressure from some senators who said that if you grant a pardon to Assange, we're not going to guarantee that we will not vote for conviction if there is an impeachment trial.
Yep, and I'll just say this: this is the problem. The commutation, the pardon for Steve Bannon, and the idea that the swamp or the deep state put pressure on the president not to pardon those two individuals that have done intelligence damage to the United States only reinforces to the president's supporters that he is someone who is going to fight against the establishment. And so it's those type of actions at the very end that possibly are going to give legs to this movement that he wants to build post-presidency.
I've got to go. Okay, we've run out of time, but thanks to all of you for a great discussion. Thank you very much. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.